Everybody, welcome to the Big Igloo Podcast.
That was good.
Did I scare you?
You did a little bit.
I'm ready to
We're
run
ready
through
to
a
go.
brick wall.
Got it right on, man. That's what I'm talking about. Yeah.
All right.
This is so weird. I know this is like so cramped quarters here. I feel like I'm like we're gonna have like a thumb battle off here or something between you two, and I'm like the referee. If you're watching online, you'll get that joke. Otherwise, if you're listening, just forget about it. We'll keep moving. So here we're walking through the best sermon ever. And guys, as I've been going back through the content, I want to apologize to the listeners because I think every week we've commented on the amount of time that's gone by.
Oh, yeah.
And it's like, wow, we are not professional podcasters. So I'm just not going to mention. I'm not going to mention the time, but it was good to kind of go back and review and edit some of the stuff because early on, John, you and I, in one of the first episodes, we talked about, of course, we talked about the big three, how Jesus is going to address the big three, money, sex, power, right? And then we talked about how Riley Ross in our men's group back then, I won't say when, but he brought up the shopping cart thing. And then we referenced how you had told me this thing was going around on the internet.
Yeah.
And we've been promising the shopping cart thing for a while. So we got to start there.
Perfect.
We got to start with the shopping cart thing. So if you've been following along, we've been teasing this up and we have not delivered on this. And so here it is. This was going around online, and as I understand it, it's pretty controversial. People, and it does like strike some things, you know. It's really interesting. So see what you think. This is what it said. Someone, I think on Reddit or something like that, posted this out there. And it says, the shopping cart is the ultimate litmus test for whether a person is capable of self-governing. To return the shopping cart is an easy, convenient task, one which we all recognize as the correct, appropriate thing to do. I mean, do we agree with that so far?
Yeah,
Absolutely.
I would absolutely agree.
I mean, we wouldn't say it's inappropriate to take a shopping cart back.
Nothing's worse than you see an open spot at Walmart and there's a shopping cart blocking the way.
And you realize why it was in an open spot.
Yes,
That's right.
Exactly.
So are you going to get out and return it for the parking spot? I might. All right. So we all recognize this. All right. So I guess right there, maybe someone might object to that premise, but I don't know why. It seems reasonable that we all would agree with that. Okay. To put the shopping cart back is objectively right, okay? No situations other than dire emergencies, which the person is not able to basically take the cart. Simultaneously, it is not illegal to abandon your shopping cart. Therefore, the shopping cart presents itself as the apex example of whether a person will do what is right without being forced to do it. No one will punish you for not returning the shopping cart. No one will fine you or kill you for not returning the shopping cart. Although Travis was pretty heated.
I did.
And we talked about, John and I talked about hate in your heart,
Yes.
that Jesus addresses here. So, maybe according to Jesus. Okay. No one will kill you for not returning the shopping cart, except maybe Travis in his heart. You gain nothing by returning the shopping cart. You must return the shopping cart out of the goodness of your own heart. You must return the shopping cart because it is the right thing to do, because it is correct. A person who is unable to do this is no better than an animal, an absolute savage, who can only be made to do what is right by threatening them with a law and the force that stands behind it. The shopping cart is what determines whether a person is a good or bad member of society.
Wow.
What do you think, John?
I feel good then because I always return my shopping carts.
Okay, I always return mine as well. I don't think I've ever just left it there.
Right.
So
Yeah.
But what about the next step? Like as far as like, would you return someone else's shopping cart?
I have done that.
If
I'm like walking by, I'll just grab it.
But would I do it every time? If I saw it across the parking lot, would I go out of my way?
I probably wouldn't.
What would Jesus do?
Ooh, here comes Kris with this. Jesus, what does Kip Van Winkle say? Jesus jukes.
Jesus jukes. Nice. So anyway, well, we've been promising the listeners, viewers, that for a while. So think about the shopping cart test. There it is. You can go look it up online, shopping cart test. Anyway, hey, we are just a couple episodes away from wrapping this thing up. And so as we've kind of progressed through, we've covered a lot of ground here. And of course, by no means have we like exhausted every option. I mean, you could ponder and study the Sermon on the Mount and get so much out of it. But we're going to go to Matthew chapter 7, and we're going to kind of cover these three today of judging, asking, and then, of course, the golden rule. And so what I want to do is I'm going to just jump and we're going to look at this judging section first. All right.
Yeah.
So buckle up. Here we go. Here's what Jesus says. He says, judge not that you be not judged. I'm reading on the ESV. For with the judgment you pronounce, you will be judged, and the measure you use it will be measured to you. Why do you see the speck that is in your brother's eye, but do not notice the log that is in your own eye? Or how can you say to your brother, let me take the speck out of your own eye, when there is a log in your own eye? You hypocrite, first take the log out of your own eye, then you will see clearly to take the speck out of your brother's eye. Do not give dogs what is holy, and do not throw your pearls before pigs, lest they trample them underfoot and turn and attack you. So, gentlemen, could I submit to you, this is one of the most taken out of context verses in the Bible?
You probably, yeah.
I mean, especially by people who don't even read the Bible.
Oh, yeah.
Don't judge.
Yep.
Don't judge.
Oh, man.
You're judging. Don't judge.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm on a soapbox here. No, but seriously, like it is one of those things that, you know, immediately, whether it be the Twitterverse, whether it be, you know, social media, whatever, immediately, if someone calls something wrong or something a sin, immediately it's don't judge.
Yep.
Right.
Don't judge, John. What do you think about that?
I guess my first question would be,
Yeah.
at the end it says, you hypocrite, first take the log out of your own eye, and it says, then you will see clearly to take the speck out of your brother's eye.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess the first question I would have is judging really inherently bad in a sense?
Right.
Or is it an accountability piece? Or I guess how would you clarify judgment in the Bible?
Well, exactly. I think we have to clarify terms there. I think we've got to ask, you know, what does Jesus mean in judging? And I did just a quick little search, even just in my study Bible, and the Greek implies that you are pronouncing someone guilty before God.
Oh.
So when Jesus is saying don't judge, like don't pronounce someone guilty before God, which obviously that I would agree with that in a sense. Like I don't have a right, even if you do something wrong, I can't speak to your ultimate standing before God in that situation,
Absolutely.
right? And that's the thing is like as we as human beings, here's what's really interesting. Here's what I wanted to bring to the table. Malcolm Gladwell, I can't remember which book of his this was in. I was going through a series of his books, but he talked about this psychological experiment where they took and they showed people, I believe it was like pictures, right?
Okay.
And it was like a word association thing.
Like like if you go to a therapist, like the blobs.
No, I don't think it was ink blots. It wasn't ink blots. And now, actually, no, I'm sorry. It wasn't pictures. Now, I'm sorry. I'm recalling this. Kind of shooting from the hip here. It was actually just a word association quiz. So if I said the word hot, you would say
Cold.
Okay. All right. It was just a list of things like that. And then they cataloged their responses. Now imagine this, okay? Imagine, Travis, you're one of the participants. John, you're a participant, right? And here's what they found, okay? When I would go to someone like Travis and I would say, here's John's words when in his associations, and you'd look down and you'd see things like cold and angry and this, that what would happen is inevitably you would make judgments about John. Not knowing him, right? You don't know him. But you'd see his list of words and you'd start to put patterns together. You'd start to figure things out and you start to go, he's kind of a sick individual. You know? Or like he really has, like, I don't know. He seems
doesn't put his shopping carts away.
Yeah, I could tell from this list of words. That's great. But and then what would happen though is I would say, I'd ask and say, hey, this is, you know, you don't know John, but do you see a pattern from his words? And you would be convinced that there'd be a pattern. This is you representing the general population.
Sure.
But the minute I show you your word list and ask you if there's any pattern, they would say, no, it's just random. Yeah. It's just random.
Yep.
Yeah.
And what's interesting about this experiment is it's a window into human psychology that I think 2,000 years ago, Jesus is speaking to this condition.
Yeah.
I think what he's saying is, you know what? You think you got other people figured out? Look to yourself first. Yeah. Look to yourself first. Because here's the deal. Actually, in context, what is Jesus actually saying about, helping our brother out? What do you get from this? Is he saying we don't bring up things at all?
No, yeah, he's giving us guidance to how to judge other people, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's.
And I think even with the log in your own eye, I think, I forget, there was an old film on Matthew or something like that back in the day. And it was really well done. It kind of went verse by verse or whatnot. I remember the actor grabbed like a log that was on the ground and he holds it up to his face and stuff. And it was really funny. And I thought it really, ever since I saw that, I come back and I look at this and I imagine Jesus like, speaking to a crowd and grabbing this thing and putting it in his eye and people laughing like, I get the point,
Yep.
And I think he is. I think he's speaking, hyperbolically here.
Sure.
But I find it interesting that again, I think he is talking about, hey, clean house first.
Yep.
John, you look like you're chewing on something over there.
Oh, no, I was just reading because like what Travis just says, it says, then you will see clearly to take the speck out of your brother's eye.
Yeah.
And so it's just like you said, it's a self-examination.
Yeah.
And to move on from what I am interested in is this last verse. Do not give dogs what is holy.
Yeah.
Do not throw your pearls before pigs, lest they trample them underfoot and turn to attack you.
That's good.
To be honest, I don't even know where to go with that. And so
Oh,
you
want to take a shot at it, Travis?
No. I was just saying, it seems like there is a little bit of a jump there.
Right.
Yeah.
Where it's kind of like a thought shift and I don't know, at least wording.
It does strike me as weird. It just kind of seems thrown in there.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, I mean, the next thing that we're going to go to is the ask and it will be given. So ask and it will be given to you, seek and you will find, knock and it will be opened. So it's kind of like, you always look to what comes before and what comes after. I don't know that I have a great answer. And of course, we've kind of set up this podcast to be kind of just a casual conversation.
Sure.
And, the Bible is meditation literature. And sometimes it's just good to come back and, meditate and ponder. What I do notice though immediately is what do dogs and pigs have in common to the Jewish people?
They're both unclean.
Both unclean animals, right?
Yeah.
So they're both unclean animals. So Jesus is talking about don't give to dogs what is holy. Don't throw your pearl. A pearl would, just like today, it's a piece of jewelry, right? Don't throw your pearls before pigs, lest they trample them underfoot, turn and attack you. This is what I put down. I think there's at least a principle here where Jesus is talking about, choose your battles. Mm-hmm. And I think a principle that we could extract from here. Now, obviously, he's not speaking to what I'm about to say directly because this is not the context of his day.
Yeah.
But it made me think of social media.
Yeah.
Social media warriors, right? People behind keyboards.
Yep.
I mean, think about this. In a world that is unclean, it doesn't mean that we don't speak the truth, but my goodness, I think there's just times where we are casting our pearls before swine.
Sure.
I think there's times that we're, throwing things out that it's like, what good is this ultimately going to do?
Yeah.
Right.
How are you stirring the pot and different things? And I think, again, what's interesting, if that's coming on the heels where he says, hey, remove the log first. And I mean, again, think about it. How many people do we know on social media that cast judgments and all that kind of stuff? And it's like, boy, you don't have any room to be talking, right?
Yeah.
like, let's just be honest. Like, there's just things you see posted. You're like, really? You're going to say that?
Yeah.
But the context earlier is Jesus says, hey, how can you say to your brother? Mm-hmm. That'd be someone you're in community with.
Right. Sure.
And I wonder, it's so crazy. And here's the deal is I look at the social media warriors and hey, we don't have to look any farther than just even in the body of Christ, how many discernment brothers and sisters we have out there that are just taking hatchets to ministries and name dropping and calling people out and stuff. And don't get me wrong. I think there's a place for discourse in our society, but man, there are some people whose blogs I've come across where it's like, man, you don't like anybody.
Right.
Like, it's like, I bet Jesus barely makes the cut. And it's like, because I mean, it's like, it doesn't matter. You could bring up N.T. Wright, Billy Graham. You could bring up, like you could bring up so many different people and be like, they're a heretic. And it's like, you don't even know what that word means. Sure. You just want to throw that out. But I think about that just in the context of pearls before swine and just even the whole attitude on social media in general. It was a thought that I had when I was thinking about that. So, you guys want to go to the next section?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay, so here we go. Let's go to the next. It says, ask and it will be given to you. Seek and you will find. Knock and it will be open to you. For everyone who asks receives, and the one who seeks finds, and to the one who knocks it will be open. Which one of you, if his son asks him for bread, will give him a stone? Or if he asks for a fish, will give him a serpent? If you then, who are evil, know how to give good gifts to your children, how much more will your Father who is in heaven give good things to those who ask him? So right away, John's going to go from this podcast and go ask for a Bentley, right?
That's right.
Because that's what the text says. You don't have one? You didn't ask, right, John? Is that what we're to take away from this passage?
I guess that was my first reaction of
don't
what's
do
the
it.
context? Yeah, right. What's the context behind this? Because it's obvious. Hopefully, it's obviously to people that it's not. You can ask anything, and God's going to give you everything.
Right.
Yeah.
And so I guess what's this context? Like who is he targeting for this?
Yeah.
Okay.
Take a shot, Travis.
No, I've got, give me 3 seconds because I just had a thought here.
Okay.
And I'm going to jump ahead just a little bit.
Okay.
But,
Ooh.
Oh,
okay.
Foreshadow.
No, but this is a verse that I always get mixed up. And it's really interesting. No, it's not even in Matthew. It's in Luke.
Uh-huh. Are you talking about the Holy Spirit?
I am.
Yeah. So when Luke records this, he says he puts this in context of asking for the Holy Spirit specifically, which is really interesting. And just a little side note is Luke puts a heavy emphasis on Jesus ministering in the power of the Spirit.
Right.
It's Luke who records the Gospel of Acts, which, or I say the Gospel of Acts. I mean, it is kind of. It's the acts of the Holy Spirit. I mean, that's the acts that we're recording. And so Luke especially wants to point towards the Spirit's activity.
Yeah.
And so it is interesting because Matthew doesn't necessarily record it that way, but Luke puts that in there. And of course, this is the Sermon on the Mount. That's the Sermon on the Plain. Were these two different sermons? Some people think so,
But certainly, I think, it fits in the context, though, of the Sermon on the Mount, especially from Matthew 6.
Right.
When Jesus talks about, have the treasure, where your treasure is, your heart is.
Yes.
And so this idea of, God is that ultimate treasure. Asking for good things, obviously, God's going to give himself. He's the ultimate good.
Yeah.
And it seems to make,
Well, and again, I think what you're pointing out, Travis, is so important. We have such a tendency to grab and isolate a verse and just hone in on it and get so focused when, like you said, if we think about this in terms of, the Beatitudes, if we're meek and humble and merciful and seeking righteousness, those who hunger and thirst after righteousness, right? So guess what? If we're hungering and thirsting after righteousness, we'll put it in context. This is the same sermon. Right. What are we going to be asking for?
Right.
Yeah.
What are we going to be seeking for? What are we going to be knocking for? Right.
Right.
And I jotted this down in my notes that really, if you think ask, seek, knock. Ask represents humility. Knowing when you ask, you don't have the answer.
Right.
You're asking for the answer. There's humility there. When you seek, that's taking responsibility. It's not just going, God is God, prop my feet up. He's got it all.
Yeah.
No, I'm going to do something. I'm going to ask.
Sure.
I'm going to seek. I am going to do something because I know the God of the universe hears my prayers.
Yeah.
And so I'm going to take responsibility. I'm going to go to God in prayer, right? Right. And then knock is persevering. I'm not just going to ask, hey, God, you got this. Okay, bye. No, I'm gonna ask God, what's your solution? What's your answer? I'm gonna keep seeking you, and then I'm gonna continue in prayer.
Yeah,
I'm gonna continue fighting for righteousness. If someone just zooms in, and again, we got to break out of fortune cookie theology.
Yeah,
where it's like, oh, that looks good on a fortune cookie wrapper.
Right.
Verse 7, asking to be given to you. Wow, that's not great. Well, that's in context of something.
Sure.
Could it be fair to say, and even verse 11 says, if you then who are evil,
could
he be alluding to humans' hearts in a sense?
Yeah.
Our posture of how we ask for things. Because he says, if you then who are evil know how to give good gifts, how much more will your Father who is in heaven give good things to those who work?
So this is a common trick of Jesus where he'll appeal to the lesser to emphasize the greater. So he's basically saying, hey, guys, you guys, we know. I mean, we're fallen, we're corrupt, you know. Well, he didn't say we because he's not. But, as human beings, he's like, you guys are fallen and corrupt. You're evil. But even you get this.
Right.
And if you schlubs can understand this, right? If you guys can get this, how much more does God get this? You understand justice in a way. How much more does God get this? And so he's appealing to a lesser to exalt the higher. Yeah. So it's not this just I can ask for whatever I want and get it. Doesn't sorry, no Bentley. At least not now. Yeah. Unless the Lord wills. But all right, let's jump to the last section here. The golden rule. Here we go. And you well know the golden rule?
Yeah.
What is it?
Do unto others as you would have them do unto you.
No, it's he who has the gold makes all the rules. Dad joke. Thank you. All right.
Yep.
Not in the Bible. Not in the Bible. No. I don't.
Chris is a heretic.
Chris File's a heretic. Come on. All right. Here we go. It says, so whatever you wish that others would do to you, do also to them. For this is the law and the prophets. Enter by the narrow gate, for the gate is wide and the way is easy that leads to destruction, and those who enter by it are many. For the gate is narrow and the way is hard that leads to life, and those who find it are few. So whatever you do unto others, I'm going to say it again, would do to you, do also for them. For this is the law and the prophets. What you guys think?
I think the golden rule is almost diluted in today's age. So, for example, how you asked about the shopping carts.
Yeah.
My first reaction, you said, would you go across and grab that shopping cart? I was like, absolutely not. I'm going to find a different parking spot. But I feel like in today's age, a lot of people kind of do the bare minimum of the golden rule. As long as it directly affects them, they'll do it. But going beyond that and saying, I'm going to do this to bless somebody else, even though it doesn't directly affect me, I think that's honestly lacking a lot in today's society.
Yeah. I agree.
Something I remember my kindergarten teacher teaching this to us. And I was like, of course there was no Bible context or anything, but it was like word for word out of the Bible. And it's interesting, like looking back, even just, looking at it in context, it is like how you relate to others.
Yeah.
And exactly, the whole judging thing where, chapter 7 starts off with all this. It is, it's kind of like, he's relating how you deal with other people. And I don't know.
Well, absolutely. And I love that, it says, so whatever you wish that others would do to you, do also to them. For this is the law and the prophets. And Jesus makes this a point on more than one occasion when he talks about, essentially love God, love people.
Yeah.
On this hangs the law and the prophets. So Jesus is bringing this message to a close, and he summoned everything up. And we did an episode on the law and how Jesus came to not to abolish the law, but to fulfill the law. And I think there's a misunderstanding in the body of Christ about, and I said this in that episode, and if you didn't hear it, you can go back and take a listen to it. But I think there's a misunderstanding about the law and what the law is. It is good, but we have to understand what it's for. And the thing of it is like God's heart has never changed in this whole thing. And Jesus, here's the thing. If you don't think the law was good, well, then why is Jesus appealing to it?
Right.
Because he's saying, if you'll love God, love people, you'll fulfill. It's just that the problem is life is so complex that if you try to make a rule for everything, it's crazy that, I just, I kind of started a new part-time job, and I won't say where or anything like that, but there's certain measures and standards and regulations, and it's like I went through a series of trainings, and it's like, man, it's just regulation upon regulation upon regulation upon regulation, and without just going into too many details, it was amazing to me that I'm sitting there going like, oh my goodness! Like you have rules for rules. You know what I mean? And think about it. It's like go to the grocery store, go to the pharmacy, and pick up a tube of hemorrhoid cream or something like that, and turn it to the back. And what does it say?
Yeah.
Do not consume orally, right? In other words, don't eat it. Don't eat it. And it's like, do we really need that rule? But yes, because some,
Yeah.
God bless whoever they are, did it, right? Somebody did something like that. Or I think there was one time, I think it was like a Jeff Foxworthy bit or something like that, where, a lawnmower instruction actually said, do not use on roof. And it's like, but somebody did it, right?
Yeah.
And something I've really appreciated that I came across in the Bible Project, on one of their podcasts or whatever, Tim Mackey made this point. And I just think this is so amazing. Mm-hmm. God's intention has always been that man would live by wisdom. Mm. You know what I'm saying? And if you go to the Garden of Eden, in the innermost part, right, you've got the tree of knowledge of good and evil. And then you've got the tree, there's basically the tree of life, right? Mm-hmm. And Proverbs tells us that wisdom is a tree of life. Yeah. So if we just let the Bible interpret the Bible, the tree of life, wisdom is there in the garden. Yeah. And Adam and Eve could make a choice of either living by wisdom, which can discern and tell, hey, in this situation, do this, in this situation. But instead, they chose to eat from the knowledge of good and evil, which means we will self-determine. We will, and of course, we see this through the rest of the Bible, we will do what's right in our own eyes. Mm-hmm. And the problem is what we've seen is since then, when we do what's right in our own eyes, we wind up woefully short. Yeah. And the reality of it is like, just John, you probably understand this as a youth pastor. I mean, you could be doing games with the youth group and think that you cover every rule, and some little kid will be, but you didn't say.
Every time, without a doubt.
Yeah, and it's like, but you're not getting the heart of the rule, right? And so you got some little kid that's ruining the game, right?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. I used to be one of them too, so I can't say too much.
I wasn't pointing fingers. No, I mean, seriously, every year I remember we would do something and someone would do something. It's like, well, but you didn't say. Yeah. And it's like, come on, that's not wisdom.
Right.
That's not wisdom. And something else Tim Mackey from the Bible Project said that I really liked is he said this. He goes, if you'll live by wisdom, your rule book is really short. Mm. Love God, love people. But if you want to live by laws, it just becomes, and the crazy thing is there's 613 laws in the Old Testament, and that was never meant to be an exhaustive list. Yeah. But it's just, you get to be almost like when Jesus is confronted by, well, who's my neighbor? You know, hey, well, all of this. Go, love your neighbor. Wow. But who is it? And that's what the human heart does. Mm-hmm. The human heart hedges its bets, looks for shortcuts.
See how close they can get to the line.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's not wisdom.
Right.
That's not wisdom. And the beauty of it is if even if you go to the Old Testament and you read through it, you can see the wisdom and beauty of God. And there's an example of in the book of Numbers, and again, if you treat the Bible like a rule book, it's going to be woefully short. Sure. Because it was never meant to handle every single situation, right? But you should be able to gain wisdom from reading it. Mm-hmm. And there's a beautiful spot where there's these daughters who present themselves to Moses, and they come to Moses and they're like, hey, our dad's portion of the land, you said, it says in the law to give it to his sons. Well, he doesn't have any sons. And so our dad's portion is going to be gone unless there's something, we should be able to get that part of the inheritance. So in other words, this was stated in the law. Right. And so Moses is like, okay, I'll go appeal to God. So Moses goes to God and God says, they're right. Those girls are right. So give them a portion. Mm-hmm. And so again, it's just one of these things that as we look at this, when it comes down to it, when it comes down to love God and love people, we need to first admit we're not very good at it. Sure. And we don't know what it looks like. Yeah. But if we'll ask God, here's the beautiful thing. James says if we'll ask God for wisdom, he supplies it liberally. Yeah. And so maybe that's just where we kind of leave it for today. But, just think about that. What does it look like to live by wisdom, right? What does it look like to love your brother, love your sister? What does it look like to examine my life, to examine, to help them with whatever, they may be dealing with, and not casting our pearls before swine like we're some social media warrior out there gonna, win the world through our keyboard strokes. Yeah. Not that I'm, we can share our faith out there, but absolutely, those are my thoughts. What give you guys each a takeaway here.
Man, I just love the aspect at the beginning, I think I've opened up to you about this. I just think accountability is a lost art in today's world. And I think it's so huge for us to be able to, because now the word judgment has gotten such a bad rap in the sense of, oh, you don't like me as a person, you think I'm a failure, where it's just accountability places. Like you're seeing clearly, so you're trying to help somebody else not fall. It's a perfect example of iron sharpens iron. Yeah. But we've taken it to a place where it's almost like have a vendetta against you and I'm trying to decredit you as a Christian and as a person. And I hate the fact that it's such a lost art because it's so important. Sure. And it's helped me grow and it's still helping me grow.
Well, and even what you said, John, the terminology, things, that show up on social media or in whatever, like, well, I owned you or I roasting somebody and stuff like that. Like it's this whole idea of like, it's this finality. It's not dialogue. Right. Yeah. We credit ourselves with that. Travis.
Yeah. It's funny. You shared a message with me a long time ago and asking yourself, what's the wise thing to do and seeking that wisdom. And man, if we would just ask ourselves, okay, what's the wise thing for me to do at this point?
Was this the series that he made that Can I Punch Travis in the face?
No, that's a different message. What's the wise thing to do? That was a book by Andy Stanley, The Best Question Ever. Yeah. And it's so good. And because 100%. If I look for, if I look for the shortcuts or cutting corners or, shopping carts, right? Yeah. What's the wise thing to do? Just ask yourself, in light of your past, your present, your future, what's the wise thing to do? Man, you'll make the right decision. Yeah. So if you really answer that honestly, so
good.
Nice. Well, we covered some good ground. I believe we have one episode left. We're going to cover the rest of Matthew 7, and then we'll bring that to a close. So thank you so much for tuning in, and like, subscribe, share. It's all free, all good stuff there. Yes. We'll see you next time on the Big Igloo Podcast.